Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our Zoom webinar today. We had a public meeting in person yesterday, and we got some great feedback, so we look forward to participating with you virtually today. This is for the I-95 Stanford Planning and Environmental Linkages Study, or PEL study. And I'll just get it started. I'll be our facilitator today. My name's Stephanie. Hi, everyone. If you are we are in a webinar format, so you can write your comments or questions through the Zoom Q&A button at any point during the presentation. You'll remain muted except for the public comment period at the end, which we'll instruct you through. If for any reason you have trouble getting in to the meeting, there's a dial-in phone number. And we can put that in the chat as well. And we'll also have immediate inquiries, a message in the chat coming through on our next slide. So most of you are probably familiar with Zoom already, but we do have live closed captioning available today. If you need to have the captions in another language, you can click the captions and to select the language that you would like your captions in, and that can show up for you today. We also have technical support available if you need help with the Zoom platform, and we will put that information in the chat for you. You can reach out to our technical assistance host, and she can get you any support that you need. And we also have commenting at the end, and we'll repeat this slide at the end as well. You'll be using the raise hand button, which you can see here on the screen. In the Zoom function, we'll call on speakers in the order that the hands are shown on the screen. So it may not be in the order you see, but it'll be the order that I see. So I'll just call it in the order of what I see first in our little boxes. And then when you're called upon, we will invite you to unmute, and our tech host will help unmute you. Just please state and spell your full name when you begin, and just limit your comments to 5 minutes so that everyone gets a chance to speak. And there will be a little timer on the should be on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, so we can keep everyone have a chance to share and speak. And I'll also let the group know when there's 1 minute left and 30 seconds. So also the Q&A is open for questions. You'll see the Q&A box. All your questions can be typed in the Q&A feature throughout the presentation. So during the presentation, if you have a question, say, oh, I need to ask about that, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we will address it during our discussion portion. And any member of the study team, the appropriate person will respond to your question that comes in through the Q&A. We'll also, again, put the media representative information. This is for members of the media who are here today. We'll put that into the chat as well. And we just need to read our Title VI slide. We have the notice here, no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We will put the civil rights flyer available in the chat and a demographic survey. We also have a project survey that we will put in the chat towards the end of the meeting. We'd love to get your feedback on that, on just basic information about your experience in I-95. And then at the bottom here, CTDOT may adopt or incorporate planning products from this PEL study into federal or state environmental review process pursuant to Title 23 USC 168. The project is formally identified as State Project Number 135-347. And now I will turn it over to Jonathan Dean. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Introducing the Connecticut DOT study team, Mike Calabrese is the Division Chief of Highway Design. Neil Patel is the Principal Engineer of the Major Highways Unit. Again, my name is Jonathan Dean. I'm the Project Manager in the Major Highways Unit working on this project, and Joe Belrose is our Project Engineer. Today's agenda, you heard the introductions, and following that, I will give an overview of the PEL study process that we're following, as well as the particulars of this study. We'll give an update on the adjacent roadways process, um, the mobility access analysis, and then we'll talk about the mainline I-95 concept screening that we've been undertaking. So far we've done level one screening, which is the what we call the universe of alternatives, and then we'll talk about that level two screening, which takes those universe down to a smaller number from 12 and then on. And following that, we will give an update and overview of the next steps and the schedule for the PEL. Okay, PEL study overview. So for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, this is an overview of our study area. So we call it the exit 7 to 9 study, but we've actually extended the traffic analysis area down to exit 6 to capture some of the ongoing construction work that's been happening between exit 6 and 7 to construct auxiliary lanes there. You'll notice by the exit 8 symbol, we're calling out bridge number 32. That's really the impetus for this study. That bridge has been recently rehabilitated to give us another 10 or 15 years of service life. But following that, we're planning for its eventual replacement. And so because there's so much going on in downtown Stamford, busy highway, lots of ramps on and off. As we look at the future of that bridge, we have to understand what is the vision for this whole corridor. So that's why we're undertaking this study. We're also looking at diversion routes like Route 1. So we have West Main Street and Tresser Boulevard, and we've also got adjacent roadways that we'll talk about where the ramps touch down. You can also see the Metro North Railroad on this map, a prominent feature. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the PEL study process that we've been following. This is, again, our third public meeting so far. Previously in the study, we've established the existing conditions. What are the needs and the deficiencies in terms of how people move through Stamford, traffic operations, safety, multimodal access. From that, we created our draft purpose and need that will guide the alternatives development and selection. And from there, we've developed concept alternatives and started screening. So today we're going to cover, again, level one screening, which was a low level of detail of what we call that universe of alternatives, followed by level two screening, where we get into a little bit more detail. After we complete level two, we'll move on to a third level of screening, and that will potentially narrow the field down even further. And the resulting alternatives, there could be multiple alternatives that come out of the PEL and are identified to move forward into the next phase of the project development, which would be the more detailed environmental review under the National Environmental Policy Act. So there will be more public and stakeholder outreach to come, both in this study process and future studies as well. Now, how does this study fit into the larger timeline? How do we get to construction? So again, I mentioned that Bridge 32, we've got about 10 or 15 more years of service life. So really the goal is to have that replacement done in the mid-late 2030s. Now, again, this PEL study process that we're following, we're in the very early stages. Really, we have to look at everything. Everything's kind of on the table at this point. But the advantage of this process is that we combine the early transportation planning with community input, identifying environmental resources. That gives us that range of alternatives that we will take into that next step in the environmental review under NEPA. It'll give us a more complete NEPA process and hopefully an expedited NEPA process as well. When NEPA is done, that's when it will identify one preferred alternative, which would then go into further design And that's when we start acquiring right of way and getting our permits. I do also want to note that one of the goals of this PEL study and others that we're working on in the state is to identify what we call breakout projects or independent projects that could be done sooner. We've collected a lot of data, done a lot of analyses of transportation conditions, not just on I-95, but again on some of those adjacent roadways. And we want to identify projects that could be done sooner to provide safety and operational benefits. And now I'll hand it over to Ralph.
All right. Hope everybody can.
Mhm.
All right. I hope everybody can hear me. And Stephanie, if you are the host, you have to turn my video back on. There we go.
You are back on.
Back on. So good morning, everybody. My name is Ralph Danisco. I'm a senior principal at Stantec and an integrated mobility planner. And I get to lead much of the non-mainline portions of this PEL study. And as Jonathan said, one of the things that the PEL study acknowledges is the adjacent roadways. So we're looking at a larger study area. It's all of the roads sort of directly adjacent to the main line that are all going to be affected and impacted. They are today by how the main line works, by where those on and off ramps are. And the overall study area recognizes the correlation between the main line and those local roads. And as we do the evaluation criteria for phase three, which we'll talk about, we'll see how we do that much more explicitly. But one of the things that the DOT has asked this process or charged this process with doing is developing several of these adjacent roadways to an advanced concept level of design and align those with the mainline alternatives. And these are the roads that we're taking that extra deep look at right now. So Tresser, East Main, Elm Canal, and Washington Boulevard. We can go to the next slide. Because for each of those, what we did was we started with the current city plans. City of Stamford is constantly updating and fixing and making changes to each of these roads, signal timing, parking, operations, safety improvements, all of those things. Um, so we built all that in, understood all the private improvements that are happening as well. And then working with the project advisory committee, we developed several approaches for each of these corridors, sort of for what they might look like or how we might want to treat them. And we chose one, and then we've been coordinating those approaches through a concept development process, working with the city, with the sort of full DOT team, so that when we come back at the next PAC meeting and eventually in the public meeting, we can show you some real concept designs for each of those corridors that we can then feed back into the mainline process. And as Jonathan said, I think hopefully some of them, could be in a position to be advanced in line with the mainline or even sooner. So that's something we would very much look forward to sharing at a later date. We can go to the next slide. Additionally, the process has been scoped to include a larger review of what we're calling mobility access. And for there, we're looking at a much larger area than just the adjacent roadways. You can see it on the map on the next slide. And you can see it goes all the way down to the Sound and pretty far north within the city of Stamford. The dashed line shows the kind of mainline area that we talked about a little bit earlier. And our first step here when we're looking at mobility access is documenting places that are particularly challenged and populations that are particularly challenged. So this could be important locations in Stamford that are hard to get to, or very important schools, hospitals, grocery stores, community centers, parks, things like that. And sort of overlaying that, which is what you're seeing here with places where there are concentrations of populations that are mobility challenged. It could be people without cars, people who are younger, people who are older, people with lower incomes, those sorts of things. And we're doing that and then looking at the larger multimodal network from all perspectives, the pedestrian bicycle networks, transit analysis, safety issues, and then identifying gaps. So where is it where those populations and those destinations and the infrastructure do not match up well, so that we can focus on developing some goals for how we would address those things, and with a particular focus on those challenged areas. We can go to the last slide here. And where we are in this process is we've developed an overview guide. So we've summarized all that information, all that's going to be available. We're on an ongoing basis holding stakeholder interviews and pop-up events throughout that study area. We've held a survey, we're coordinating that with the city and establishing goals and metrics, which are going to say things like, everybody in Stamford should be within 3 blocks of a high quality bus route, just as an example. It may not be exactly those words. And then identifying where we are meeting those criteria and where we are not. And then listing out a whole series of potential improvements that we can prioritize with those goals in mind, and then take 10 of them and develop them to a concept level, that becomes a little bit actionable. We would know this is what we would do, and this is what it would look like, and this is how much it might cost, so that those can be picked up, as all of these processes emerge. So that's where we are with both of these processes. Much more detail to come at subsequent meetings, but really today, and at this meeting, we're here to focus on the mainline alternatives. And with that, I turn it to Emily.
Thank you, Ralph. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Valentino. I am the project manager for the consultant team at Stantec, and I'm also a traffic and safety engineer. So while Ralph and his mobility team have been developing the adjacent roadway concepts, we have been working in parallel on the mainline alternative development. So that's what we'll talk about today. One of the benefits of a PEL study is that we take a comprehensive look at all potential options. This way, when we move to the NEPA phase, we aren't starting from scratch. So that'll save us time and effort. So we categorize these alternatives into what we're calling the universe of alternatives. And these are high-level categories, and we split them into 4. So we first have transportation demand management, or TDM. And those are strategies to reduce the personal vehicle demand on the roadway. Examples could be van pool or HOV lanes. Second category, we have transportation system management, or TSM. And that looks to manage the traffic operations using intelligent transportation systems to try to optimize the freeway conditions and performance. Things like that could include ramp metering, so limiting the number of vehicles that get on the main line at a time using a traffic signal, or variable speed limits, or optimizing traffic signals at the ramp termini. Third category in the universe of alternatives, we have the alternative transportation modes. So that looks to facilitate fast and reliable alternate modes of transportation by improving the infrastructure. And that would be bus and rail and pedestrian and bicycle facilities. The fourth and final category we have is improve the existing I-95 corridor. So this would be enhancements to the existing mainline, interchanges, ramps, and adjacent roadways. Treatments could be improving the capacity, enhancing the merging lanes, widening the shoulders so there's space if you get a flat tire, you can pull over to change your tire. So we have 4 levels or 4 types of categories in the universe of alternatives, and this is the level 1 screening. So this is the highest level. How do we evaluate these 4 alternatives? We go back to the purpose and need statement, which really emphasizes the foundation of the project. So what is the purpose of doing the study, and what are the needs of the community and the users of these roadways? So we start with the draft preliminary purpose and need statements, and we have 3 of those. So mobility and reliability. So we want to increase the mobility for people and goods. We look at geometric and alignment. So bringing any substandard alignments up to standard. And then improve bridge crossings. And I really want to point out Bridge 32 here. It needs to be reconstructed soon, regardless of this study, as John mentioned earlier. So DOT wanted to not just reconstruct the bridge, but also look at the corridor as a whole. So we look at I-95 mainline, and then also what impacts would happen to the Stamford local roadways. In the second category, we have other desired outcomes, and those can be considered secondary purpose and needs statements, and those are more focused on those adjacent roadways. So we have the mobility on those adjacent roadways, the cross connection of communities, and that's really looking at the north and south connections underneath the highway. Transportation access, so improving the facilities and access to the Stamford Transportation Center. And then construction minimization and avoiding disruption and impacts. So we have the 4 categories of the universe of alternatives. We ranked them against these purpose and needs statements. And we rank them, if we look at the next slide, from most favorable, which is a filled-in circle, to least favorable, which is a hollow circle. And if you see any of the categories with a hollow circle, that means that they do not meet the purpose and need. So on their own, TDM, TSM, and alternative transportation modes do not meet the purpose and need. Improving the existing I-95 corridor is the only category from this level 1 screening that does meet the purpose and need, and we'll move on to the level 2 screening, which I'll describe in a moment. But I do want to stress that the improve existing corridor alternatives that we come up with will include elements of the TDM, TSM, and alternative transportation modes. However, these on their own do not meet the purpose and need, but they will be incorporated into the future phases of the study. We then take it a level deeper and we go to the level 2 screening. And this breaks out again into more subcategories. I want to stress that nothing that you see today is final. We value your feedback and your input. So as we approach the level 3 screening and we move forward along the project, we will be tweaking these alternatives and making them better based on your feedback, based on the traffic analysis and other factors as well. So these subcategories of the level 2 screening, we broke them out into 3 categories. First one being added capacity alternative, AC. Second, geometric and operational alternatives, those are GEO. Collector distributor alternatives is the third category, CD roadways. So we have 3 subcategories, and then there are various elements that we included within these 3 categories, being replace bridge 32, which all of the alternatives do that, modify interchanges, improve some ramps, and realign the main line. So we mixed and matched all of these elements within the categories, and we analyzed 12 concepts within the level 2 screening. I'll start by kind of describing a little bit about those higher level categories, starting with the added capacity alternative. So what that would mean is adding capacity to the main line. So instead of 3 lanes in each direction today, there would be a 4th lane in each direction in the northbound and southbound main line. The geometric and operational category, an example would be widening shoulders, like I mentioned before. So there's a breakdown lane, so you're not impeding traffic if you need to pull over. Also, adding an auxiliary lane. Think about the project that's currently ongoing and recently completed between 7 and 6. So adding that aux lane so that there's more space to merge onto the highway and also slow down to get off of the highway. And the last category would be collector distributor alternatives. So this would be a roadway that is parallel to I-95. It would not disrupt the main line. The roadway would collect vehicles, so all the exiting vehicles would exit onto the CD roadway. The speed would be slower. And this is where all the merging and the diverging happens. So if you're getting off the highway or onto the highway, you first enter or exit the CD roadway, merge with vehicles, and then everybody together comes back onto the main line. So there are less merge and diverge points on the main line, which would lead to safer operations and smoother traffic flow. I'll now hand it over to Chris to talk about some of the more detailed elements within these categories.
Thank you, Emily. My name is Chris Benitez with Stantec. I'm the highway design lead. So as Emily was mentioning, there's 3 main categories of alternatives. And within those 3 main categories, there's a mix of these alternative elements that are listed on the left side of the screen, those 9 elements. We're going to go through each one of those in greater detail in the next few slides. But ultimately, the main takeaway here is the 12 alternatives that have been developed are based on a combination of those 3 main categories and all these uh, alternative elements that are mixed together in order for us to identify which are the best performing alternatives. So let's move on to this next slide. Bridge 32. So this bridge is along I-95, crossing over the Metro North Railroad, Myrtle Avenue, and State Street. This bridge is at the end of its useful service life, and its current configuration does not allow uh, for accommodating today's design standards. So the replacement of Bridge 32 is included in all the alternatives. All right, let's move on to another alternative element, which is the realignment of the I-95 main line. I'll first start out talking a little bit more about Bridge 32. So this bridge, reconstructing the bridge presents several challenges from a constructability and traffic maintenance perspective. So the idea with realigning the I-95 main line is to construct the bridge adjacent or near the existing bridge so that the traffic could be maintained on the I-95 facility. So this option allows for minimized constructability impacts as well as impacts to the traveling public. All right, now we're going to move over to the southbound side of I-95, exit 7 and 8. Currently at these exits, you have two on-ramps closely spaced together, short acceleration lane. This improvement would combine those ramps so that you would enter the ramps from the same location, but the exit 7 and exit 8 vehicles would merge together into a ramp before merging into the I-95 facility. So this minimizes the conflict points on the expressway, and it also allows for lengthening of that acceleration lane to smooth operations into the expressway. All right, let's continue on to the southbound side of I-95 and same exit 7 and 8, but at the off ramps. So currently exit 7 and 8 off ramps, these are successive off ramps, one after another. This improvement would similarly combine the exit 7 and exit 8 off ramps, so drivers would utilize the current exit 8 off ramp and travel down before accessing the exit 7 and exit 8. So the benefits from this improvement are one, reducing the conflict points on the expressway, which helps to improve the operations. All right, now we're going to take it over to the northbound side. Here we have exit 7 and exit 8 on-ramps. Similarly to a lot of these other on-ramps, these are successive on-ramps. So there's a lot of turbulence on the expressway at these points. This improvement would combine the ramps, similar to the southbound side, so that drivers from exit 7 and exit 8 on-ramps would merge into a ramp prior to merging into the expressway. Another improvement that reduces the conflict points on the expressway and reduces the disruptions on the expressway. So let's move over to, we have the interchange at exit 9. This is East Main. We know that there's a lot of congestion at this interchange. So this is one of the locations we're prioritizing improvements for as part of the study. One of the improvements we're evaluating are new flyover ramps. So these improvement options, we're going to continue refining and evaluating in the more detailed level 3 analysis. So let's move over to the next interchange. Another interchange, we know there's a lot of congestion. This is at Elm Street. This provides access to the exit 8 ramps. So the current interchange is what we call a tight diamond configuration. So some of the ideas we're exploring, we've been evaluating. One of them is a modified single point urban interchange. We've also taken a look at a diverging diamond interchange, as well as enhancing the existing diamond interchange configuration. So these are things that we've been evaluating, and we're going to take it to a greater level of detail in the level 3 analysis, and it's going to be harmonized with those adjacent roadway improvements. Okay, so let's take it over to this next improvement here, removing the northbound exit 7 on-ramp. So this improvement comes into play um, uh, when we're looking at the Elm Street alternative configurations, such as what I mentioned before, that modified single point urban interchange. It would be required in order to accommodate that type of interchange design. So it would also need to be required for some of the mainline alternatives. We know that the exit 7 ramp, removing it would reduce the conflict points at this location. But we also understand that it would increase the traffic at exit 8. So that's something we're going to take a closer look in the next stage of the analysis. So let's move over to the next improvement here. So the relocation of the southbound exit 6 off ramp. Let me just start with exit 7 and exit 8. Traffic, there's a lot of congestion right there at exit 7 and exit 8 on ramps. You have what I was mentioning before, closely spaced ramps, a lot of traffic entering from both of those exits, and in addition to the I-95 mainline traffic. So this improvement would relocate the exit 6 off ramp before exit 7 and exit 8. And the benefit of that is that would reduce the traffic that is on that stretch of expressway at exit 7 and 8 and improve the operations. So how would this be accomplished? The exit 6 off ramp, conceptualized, it would be access right around Elm Street, and then it would be elevated over exit 7 and exit 8 on ramps so that their exit 7 and exit 8 are maintained. And then exit 6 off ramp, that elevated section would tie back down to the I-95 main line and exit off. So let's move over to the auxiliary lane. Emily was just talking about this one. This improvement would add an auxiliary lane between exit 8 on-ramp and exit 9 off-ramp. So similar to the exit 6 to exit 7 auxiliary lane improvements that are there today. I believe they're finalized, they're completed. Okay, so let's move over to, we also looked over a few other alternatives that we dismissed early on. Primary reason for dismissing these alternatives, they had significant right-of-way impacts, amongst other things. So the tunnel alternative, we did conceptualize an alternative that goes between exit 6 and exit 9. One of the big issues with this alternative is the right-of-way required at the tunnel portals, which is the entrance and exit to the tunnel. Essentially, the tunnel portal would require that the I-95 main line is reconstructed reconstructed to the outside of the I-95 so that space is created within the center of the existing I-95 so that tunnel portals could be implemented in that location. And that would require a significant widening and right-of-way acquisition. So let's move over to a few more of these dismissed alternatives. We have the express lanes and we have the viaduct alternative. So both of these alternatives, the benefits of them would be to improve long haul traffic. Less of the traffic would be located on the local lanes of the expressway. The challenge with these, they both would require extensive right-of-way acquisition. Express lanes would essentially add a few other lanes within the center of the expressway, which would push out the other lanes of the expressway. So this could not be accommodated within the current footprint of downtown Stamford. It would require lots of impacts to State Street as well as right-of-way. And then we have the viaduct alternative. This is an elevated expressway, provide that long haul access. So the challenge with this one is extensive right-of-way right at those touchdown points where the viaduct is at grade with the expressway. So again, both of these alternatives, right-of-way acquisition impacts, and the viaduct also has a lot of constructability challenges when you're constructing a bridge over another bridge. Okay, let's talk a little bit on the next slide here with the framework. So we established a framework prior to evaluating all the alternatives, and we're going to get to some of the criteria in the next slide. But just so you know, the evaluation framework we took was establishing qualitative and quantitative evaluation measures. We came up with a scoring system, prioritized some of those purpose and need measures that Emily was mentioning, and we're gonna walk through them right now in the next slide, and then we identified those top performing alternatives. I think the key takeaway here is that this process was developed so that there is a fair and consistent approach to evaluating all of the alternatives. So let's move over to the evaluation criteria. So this is building on that level one screening. Level one screening, purpose and need, other desired outcomes. So we have transportation-based measures, we have constructability, environment, and community. So these are the measures in this level two analysis that were used to evaluate all of the alternatives. In level three, there's going to be a more detailed evaluation criteria. So let's move over to the alternatives, the screening results. So here we have the screening results, and let me just walk you through a little bit of this. So Emily was mentioning those main alternative categories you see there in the second row: added capacity, geometric and operation, collector distributor. We've developed 4 alternatives for each of those. And then on the left side of that table, you see the evaluation criteria. Those are the main categories: transportation, constructability, and environment. So we scored all the alternatives and identified a ranking for each of them from these main categories. So rank 1 being the best performing and rank 12 being the worst performing. So we have identified 4 alternatives, which we're going to walk you through in a little bit, each of these alternatives, just to go over some of the improvements. But ultimately, each of those main categories of alternatives, there's at least one alternative that is advancing to the next stage. So we're still going to be looking at, in the level 3, an added capacity, a geometric and operational, and a collector and distributor option. So having said that, we're going to now walk through some of these alternatives. Okay, so we have provided a link to the website. This is up and running. You all are free to access this and check out the alternatives, at your own leisure. So I'll walk through some of these alternatives, but ultimately, if you go to the project website, Project Alternatives tab up here, and then if you scroll down, you have all of these alternatives for the main line. So just real quick, just to get your bearings straight, top row, when you scroll down, top row, you'll see screening results, added capacity, collector distributor, geometric and operational. When you click on each of these, all the alternatives that we were just talking about, they show up. So the alternatives, what you will notice is the alternatives that are not advancing. You'll see it if, let's say, AC1, not advancing, and then some of the alternatives that are advancing, they will not have that. So those are the ones that you want to check out if you want to check out the advancing alternatives. So let's talk a little about AC4. So this alternative, this is the one that would be adding an additional lane in each direction of the main line. So it would include 4 lanes in each direction. Now let me highlight some of the main improvements from this one. I'm going to zoom in, and you can zoom in if you're a little unfamiliar with this. If you just click on the map, you can drag the map anywhere, and you can zoom using the zoom features here. You can also, I believe, you could scroll as well. Yes, I'm scrolling, so okay. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so y'all can see. So AC4. This is one of the improvements that we're looking at for AC4, modifying this interchange. This, what you're seeing here is that modified single point urban interchange. Keep in mind, Emily mentioned it. These are not final. We're still going to be making lots of refinements, and we're going to be evaluating these in greater detail in the next stage. So this is the modified interchange. This improvement would also include, actually, let me zoom back in. Maybe it's stay here at this zoom level. This is the removal of exit 7 on-ramp. And the reason why is primarily because of that modified single point urban interchange, which cannot be accommodated at this point. Okay, let's travel up a little bit more. This also includes removal of State Street. And that is because right now, based off of this modified interchange design, the ramp may not reach the vertical clearance requirements to allow for State Street to operate. So something we're going to take a closer look in the next stage. But let's move over to the final improvement here. Before we get to the interchange at Elm Street at exit 9, this improvement also includes that auxiliary lane between northbound exit 8 on-ramp and exit 9 off-ramp. So, and notice that there's labels for these improvements, so it's pretty, it makes it easier to find where these improvements are. And one thing I almost forgot to mention is we do have a description of all the alternatives on the left side of the screen, including the key elements. All right, let's get over to exit 9. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I think this is too close. Okay, so exit 9, East Main. So this is the one we're looking at, flyover ramps. We're looking at a few other options. So this is a priority interchange to evaluate. All right, let's go geometric and operational. In Geo 4, that's another one of those advanced alternatives. So I'm going to take it high level, and then I'm going to zoom into some of the other improvements. So we're starting with the interchange at Elm Street. Same thing as AC4. We're looking into modifying this interchange as part of this improvement. This would also include removing that northbound exit 7 on-ramp. All right, and then I'm going to scroll here. Removing the South State Street due to the vertical clearance. And then this would also include that auxiliary lane, which I'm going to scroll here. Here's the little sign for the auxiliary lane between northbound exit 8 on-ramp and exit 9 off-ramp. And then the final improvement here is the exit 9 interchange, which includes East Main. So very similar to AC4 in terms of the interchanges and some of the improvements. Main difference is AC adds that additional lane in each direction. All right, let's hop over to the collector distributor roads. I'll start with CD3. So collector distributor roads, 2 of them are moving forward. They're 2 very distinct alternatives. Keep that in mind. So CD3, the big difference between the 2 CD road alternatives. CD3 includes only a southbound CD road, collector distributor road, and CD4 includes both a southbound and a northbound CD road. So let's get into some of these improvements now of CD3. So, and I'll show you the CD roads in just a little bit. Let me just go through the west side here. So this alternative includes a combination of the southbound exit 7 and 8 on-ramps, which is what I was describing, how these exit 8 and exit 7, they combine. The drivers would combine into this ramp before entering the expressway. Okay, let's scroll over here. Try not to go too fast. We don't want to get dizzy. Okay. All right, so this alternative also includes a combination of the exit 7 and exit 8 on-ramps. Similar to the southbound side, this would have drivers merge into this ramp before merging onto I-95, and then that would continue as an auxiliary lane all the way over to exit 9. Another key feature here, I know I'm going back and forth. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to slow down here. But another key feature here that we're looking at, realignment of the I-95 facility. This improvement is to minimize those constructability challenges that I was mentioning earlier. So, okay, let's head over to, before we get to the CD road, let's head over to exit 9, interchange, same thing. You're going to see this concept. It's the same concept in all of the alternatives. This is something we're going to refine, but ultimately we're looking at flyover ramps and refinements to those ramps and evaluating greater detail in the next level. Okay, so what is a CD road? Let's take it over to the starting point of the CD road. This is southbound CD road. So this CD road would start right at the southbound, right around the service plaza area. And so the CD road would essentially start at the near the service plaza area, and it would allow for the on and off ramp movements to be collected, the local traffic along this CD road. Improves operations on I-95. This would continue on up until exit 8. So you see this blue line here, that is the CD road. And the CD road would continue on, allowing folks to get off on exit 7, get off on exit 8, or continue on and get on the I-95 main line at around this location between Elm Street and Canal Street. Okay, now let's go over to CD4. This is the last one, so bear with me. We're almost there. So CD4, this alternative includes both the northbound and the southbound CD road. So some of the improvements that we're looking at as part of this, I'm going to zoom in to this improvement here, removing northbound exit 7 on-ramp, and that is to accommodate the northbound CD road. So we're going to take a trip through this northbound CD road, which would start right around the exit 7, 8 area by Elm Street. CD road would start and then collect traffic from the ramps. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and you'll see this blue line on the bottom, that is the CD road alternative. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more at this interchange 9. So, and this is, keep in mind, it will be separated from the I-95 main line, collecting and distributing the traffic from the on-ramps and the off-ramps. So it would continue beyond exit 9, and then that would be the access point to the I-95 main line. Now, at the southbound CD road, it is similar design to CD3. So I'll just highlight again, this one would take drivers, it would be located between the service plaza, going southbound the service plaza, all the way over to exit 7 at that same connection point that I showed with CD3. Let me wrap up with the final improvement here. Same as all the other improvements, as I mentioned earlier, we know there's a lot of congestion here. It's a critical location to improve. So this is this interchange exit 9 East Main. That's something we're taking a close look at. So right now what you're seeing are the flyover ramps that are conceptualized. So none of these are not final. There's going to be refinements that are going to continue in level 3, as well as a more detailed evaluation. So with that, I'm going to share this back with Emily.
Thank you, Chris. Alrighty, Stephanie, if you could share back the presentation. I will talk about next steps of the study before we get into your questions. So the mobility team, next step is finalizing the adjacent roadway concepts. Those will be shared with you all in early 2026. Simultaneously, we will move into the more detailed level 3 screening of those 4 alternatives Chris just walked you through. And that will take into account the comments that we received from you all today. And we wrap up in mid-2026 with the main line, adjacent roadway, mobility access, and scenario planning analyses all coming together for the final PEL study recommendations, which will be toward the end of 2026, which we then move into the NEPA phase. So those are our next steps. Thank you everyone for listening today. We, again, really value your feedback. We can't wait to hear from you. And Stephanie will walk us through now how we can facilitate those questions and comments from you all. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I put links in the chat of where various ways you can also reach out to us. And the project alternatives page is also in the chat. Just so I'm just going to repeat the information about verbal comments and raising. I saw we had a hand up earlier. Feel free to raise your hand again if you would like to speak. We will, if you're on your phone, you would dial *9 for phone only participants. So we'll call on participants in the order the hands are raised. And some of the questions in the Q&A we will answer live as well. We've received some questions there. If you could please state your full name when you begin. And again, limit your comments to 5 minutes. We'll have the timer up for that. As I said, there's comments already in the Q&A. And we'll be responding to those live. Those that have not been answered, we'll respond to those live. John, would you like to do the verbal comments first, or would you like to answer the Q&A comments first?
Well, yeah, we've had a few Q&A comments. I think maybe we'll tackle those just since those folks have been waiting,
Okay,
and then
great.
get into some of the verbal questions.
Okay,
So
and then we will unmute you in the order that we see the hands. So we're going to go ahead and work on the Q&A questions now. We have a comment: North State Street and South State Street are both main corridors along I-95.
yeah, I'm just gonna echo that. Those are vital corridors that we're considering in our analyses.
Great. Thank you. There's a question here. Can you speak? Oh, sorry. Is improving access to the Stamford Transportation Center taking into account potential relocation of the train station and the state's use of the site of the old parking garage?
So for those of you who aren't familiar, the department recently received proposals for a transit-oriented development project at the Stamford Transportation Center, and that includes the station itself, the train station and the bus station, and the state-owned parking garages that are around Station Place and Atlantic Street. So, we don't know what those proposals are going to look like just yet, but we're early in the planning process. I think we're at a great time in our project development process to, as those proposals become public and things move forward, that we're well positioned to make sure our study is in harmony with the developments that are planned down there.
Thank you. The next question is, can you speak to how the Stamford PEL study works in coordination with the adjacent PEL studies, and how or if alternatives and improvements consider potential improvements from other studies and any existing projects?
Yeah, this is a very relevant comment to we have another PEL study immediately adjacent to this study area that's looking at basically from exit 7 down to the New York state line in Greenwich. So that's the I-95 Greenwich PEL. And, our teams are working hand in hand on those studies. Joe and I are managing both of those projects. Neil Patel, our principal engineer, is overseeing another PEL study in Bridgeport and Fairfield as well. So the Greenwich study is still working on generating alternative concepts, and as the development and evaluation process progresses, we'll keep talking between those studies and make sure that the improvements that we identify in one study area work with the other and understand the impacts of each.
Thank you. Next question is the additional capacity alternative that adds one additional lane that was discussed, is that predicted to require additional right-of-way acquisitions or taking of existing land in Stamford?
Okay. Yeah, so all of the alternatives that we're considering will likely have some temporary or permanent impacts to nearby properties. So some of those features like the reconstruction of Bridge 32, that's going to be, um, we've said it already, but a very complex undertaking, keeping traffic moving on I-95 um, while we reconstruct that bridge, adding auxiliary lanes, combining ramps, those could all have impacts. But um, the adjacent, the added capacity and collector distributor road alternatives would likely have more impacts, and impacts to the surrounding community is part of the evaluation process that we're undertaking. Uh, Stephanie, maybe we should take some of the hands that are raised here.
Sure, sure. Okay. We have coming up on my list here, a Susan Halpern. If we can ask you to unmute and you can give your comment. We're going to have a timer up shortly.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, good morning. Thank you. This is Sue Halpern, Halpern. And, thank you so much for this. It's an unbelievable presentation. So thank you. I live down the South End on Elmcroft Road, and, I'm up and down Canal Street and Washington Boulevard. I'm all around several times a day. And I haven't heard anybody mention the flooding issues that we have on Canal and South State Street, specifically Canal, South State, and North State, when there's a particularly full moon high tide. Last month we had a flooding issue on Canal Street and Jefferson Street at that intersection where they closed off the roads, and we all had to divert over to Washington Boulevard to get out of the South End. Now, I mean, this is an issue for us down here. There's 10,000, 15,000 people down here. And, if we're going to have these flooding issues, and now, we're going to have less access to getting in and out and off of 95, this will be concerning going forward. Now, my particular issue with that exit 7 is that, we get a lot of truck traffic, Canal Street, we have the asphalt plant, we have the junkyard, there's constant truck traffic every day, all day. And, I'm concerned if you eliminate the off ramp and the on ramp, where, you have all these trucks now that you're going to be dealing with. I understand that it looks like if you eliminate the exit 7 north ramp, that all that traffic will be diverted on South State Street, eventually onto Elm Street. I don't understand. I don't get where, I don't quite picture where all that traffic is going. And what happens also now when you get off exit 7 southbound onto Canal Street, you have people blocking the box because, everybody's, kind of stuck on trying to take a left onto North State Street. And then people are taking left-hand turns from the center lane to get down Canal Street. That whole area there is just a mess. But I just wanted to, let you know about the flooding issue. And I'm curious about how exactly that exit 7, taking away that exit 7 on and off ramp will help. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is part of the PEL process, is getting that community feedback and hearing from the folks that live there. And, I think the flooding issues that you mentioned, as these projects go into design, that's certainly something with resiliency and just our general drainage designs that we'll have to take into account. As you know, it's a low-lying area, so when tides are high and there's not a lot of room for the water to go, for lack of a better way of putting it, but certainly something we'll consider. And we've also heard those concerns about exit 7 and where the vehicles might go. Should we close exit 7? And these are things that we're considering. They may go, as you mentioned, down across Elm Street to get on the on-ramp there. But we know, and I think, Chris and Emily have mentioned this, as we move forward from level two screening, we get into more detailed analysis of the traffic impacts. And a big challenge with our effort to look at eliminating some of the ramps in Stamford is just how busy the intersections are. And if we close one ramp, that traffic's going to have to go somewhere, and just understanding the follow-on impacts of that. And so
Mhm.
everything that you've seen today can and probably will change to some degree the next time you see it, based on this kind of feedback and the analyses that we'll be doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, do we want to keep going with the verbal comments, John, and then switch to the Q&A?
Yeah, let's do a couple more verbal and then
Okay.
do a couple of
So
Q&A.
next up on my screen is Joshua Caskey. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then feel free to give your comment. We will be timing you for 5 minutes.
All right, can you hear me all right?
We can.
Sound good.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. The name is Joshua Caskey, Joshuacaskey. And I just wanted to speak about the alternatives. I think like I-95 through many communities in Connecticut have like posed a lot of like environmental and equity concerns regarding like vehicle pollution. And I know that in southeast or southwestern Connecticut near Stamford, there's been a lot of issues with ozone pollution. And I see that like I-95 as like a key part of that. So I'm just concerned by expanding capacity, like particularly with the can't remember which alternative it was, but it was one of the adding capacity ones that added additional lanes. It would increase that pollution by adding additional traffic through like induced demand sort of stuff. Um, uh, because I just don't see how adding capacity to a highway is in line with our goals as a state to reduce carbon emissions and improve air quality in the area. Um, I'm also concerned with the uh, uh, mentioned impacts on like existing properties. By widening I-95, it would just create a much bigger barrier to people in the Stanford community through trying to pass under an even wider roadway as a pedestrian that's loud, not clean, dirty, just not a very pleasant place to be as a pedestrian. Um, and then also the impacts to the properties. I know that it's not all finalized yet, but I would imagine that the adding capacity would probably be the most disruptive to existing properties. So I think that is also something that should be minimized. Um, yeah, so I guess I just wanted to say I think the geometric and operational alternatives I think are probably the best options in my opinion. Um, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your feedback. Would Benjamin
Yep. Sorry, could I
Handpier like? Oh, sorry.
just
Go ahead.
respond real quickly, Stephanie?
Yeah,
Thanks.
of course.
Yeah, so those are great comments. Thank you. And I do want to say that again, we're early in the process. We kind of have to look at everything. So, we have gotten a lot of feedback about concerns about adding capacity to the highway. But this is part of the process, and something that we have to look at. And I do just want to say also some of the improvements I think that we'll be able to show hopefully in the next public meeting on those adjacent roadways, Elm and Canal and Washington Boulevard. We are looking at those north-south connections in the city and making them more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, so that as we're planning for what's done on the highway. Some of those structures carrying 95 over those local streets may have to be replaced. So how can we do that in a way that accommodates more users and certainly improved lighting and um, aesthetic treatments on those bridges would make them a more welcoming place as well. So um, and not to mention the rail bridges that sometime down the line when those are replaced, the study that we're doing can say, this is how wide that bridge should be in order to accommodate those features as well. So um, please stay tuned as we move forward in the study. Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay. Sure. Should I go to the next raised hand?
Sure.
Okay. We have Benjamin Handpeter. If you want to unmute and feel free to give your comment.
Hi, yeah, you can hear me okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Ben Handpeter. I'm going to echo some of the comments from the last commenter. I appreciate the presentation, by the way, very clear, concise, so nice job with that. And I'll start by saying that replacing the bridge sounds sensible. If it's at the end of its service life, let's go ahead and do that. But everything else that we saw today, I mean, regardless of what you want to call it specifically, are just various flavors of highway expansion. And we have the benefit of being able to look at cities all over the country that have done highway expansions and watched their congestion and pollution and noise go up instead of go down. Um, and it's really kind of disheartening to me to see us in Connecticut going down that same path of doubling down on car infrastructure that we know doesn't actually achieve the goals that we want to meet. You didn't talk really about costs at all today. I imagine it's still kind of early for that, but any of these things that we saw today, I imagine are going to be on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, if not clearing a billion. And that money would be much better used doing things that would actually get cars off the road, which would not only reduce congestion and pollution, but just make our, make Stamford more livable and pleasant to be in. Things like increasing rail service and rail speed, and things like increasing bus service and bus speed, things that will, get people out of their cars and, accomplish the goals that this project, I think, wants to achieve, but won't because we've watched it fail all over the place. So I am looking forward to future presentations, seeing what kind of designs you've got for the local roads around the study area. But generally, I imagine the bulk of the money here is going towards work on 95. And to be blunt, this kind of feels like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. It's a losing battle. You can't fight traffic by adding more capacity. It just doesn't work. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And I do also want to mention safety is also a big component of this study and our purpose and need as well. So some of those geometric and operational improvements really get to improving safety on the main lines, and understand your concerns there. I do also want to mention, as a department, we have other initiatives such as the TIME program that's looking at improving travel speeds on Metro North through the corridor, and as well as a comprehensive transit study that the department's looking to undertake. Stephanie, should we take a couple
Sure.
written
Sure. Yep.
questions?
Yep. There is a question. For those living in the Cove, Chapin, and the South End, there are three major north-south entry and exits: Canal, Washington, and Elm. These three provide entry and exit to I-95 and the downtown part of the city of Stamford. I want to be sure that all of these three arteries will continue to operate.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And certainly as we look at alternatives, constructability is something very important that we have to consider how the traffic's going to move during construction, and we can't, to the best of our ability, eliminate access for the folks that live and commute in the city.
Thank
I think
you.
there was a written comment before that, Stephanie.
Regarding the ramp metering
Yeah.
question, a friend mentioned something done in California about entrance traffic signals at choke points in order to better evaluate the volume, where this could be digitized for review and monitoring flow. This is a ramp metering question, so if we want to just answer that live,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, that's fine. So that's something, yeah, ramp metering hasn't really been done in the state of Connecticut before, but it's something that we're open to. So that kind of, as the name would suggest, it limits the amount of traffic that's entering the highway so that it doesn't um, kind of overtax the lanes on the highway and only lets a sufficient amount in to kind of keep traffic moving on the main line. So one of the challenges in Connecticut is just that we need to make sure we have enough room on that ramp to store those vehicles while they're waiting to get on so that it doesn't back up into the local streets. So something we will consider and see if it works.
Thank you. Do we want to keep answering the written questions or do we want to move back to live speaking?
Let's take a couple live
Great.
questions.
Okay. Question on when the physical work will be done. We can go back to the
So
schedule page if you like.
yeah, so you know the kind of headline, top level is that 20 mid 2030s, late 2030s of completing that bridge reconstruction of Bridge 32. So um, that's going to take a number of years, 3 to 5, maybe more. But I do want to highlight that we're also looking at breakout projects that are independent that could be done sooner. So as we're doing these analyses, understanding traffic operations and safety and multimodal mobility, bicycle and pedestrian and transit, as we find potentially smaller projects, things that are independent, we will try to get those completed sooner to provide a more an earlier benefit.
Thank you. Follow-up questions. Can we give a rough budget of the modification and who will pay?
So I do want to stress we haven't done any detailed estimates at this time. It likely, previous studies have suggested that it would be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially over $1 billion. So that's as we narrow down the field of alternatives, there'll still be conceptual alternatives, but we'll start getting a little bit better picture so that we can understand. We're always operating in a fiscally constrained environment, so finding the right size project to fit in our capital plan, or if we can potentially phase the improvements over a series of time to, um, as funding comes available. And then in terms of, we haven't identified specific sources at this time. Typically, most of our funding comes from federal funding and state funds as well. So as we are getting that picture of how much the cost will be and when the expenses will be incurred, then we can find the right funding stream for each project. And certainly, the federal government has had competitive grants over the last few years as part of the recent IIJA infrastructure bill. This study is actually partially funded with some bridge investment program grant funds, which may help us to secure further grants down the line for construction.
Thank you. And one more follow-up question from that. How much the city mayor is involved with the study? And will the city have, when will they decide yes or no in terms of the various projects?
Yeah, we coordinate with city staff constantly. We have a monthly standing meeting with them. They're very busy here in Stamford doing a lot of great work. So, we need to understand the projects that are underway in Stamford, and we'll be getting their input as well throughout the process.
Great, thank you. We have one more question. Another question. Reconstruction of Bridge 32 affects Avenue. Connecticut Transit buses will be our buses entering the facility in the near future. This will be a problem with the DOT project currently going on with CT Transit. Any response to that?
Yeah, yeah, we've got that bus transit facility right there by exit 32. We're always in contact with our Bureau of Public Transportation to understand their needs in the area and their operations. So yeah, it'll be complex. Yeah, I hate to keep saying that, but as we get into that construction, there will be a lot of stakeholders to coordinate within the area. Metro North, understanding how there'll be potential impacts to the rail travel underneath, our own bus travel, all the local businesses, ensuring everybody has access. So um, as the design develops, that will be considered.
Thank you. Another question. How does the DOT square the extensive research on induced demand, as a previous commenter pointed out, more lanes does not reduce congestion, with what are, in essence, highway expansion plans?
Yeah, yeah, I'd just like to refer to my previous answers on that. So we understand the concerns about induced demand, excuse me, and um, all options are on the table right now. We're very early in the process, and um, we'll, you know, we'll consider everything at this point.
Thank you. We're going to move back to some live questions. I have David Watkins, who's raised his hand. I'm going to allow you to unmute if you would like to unmute and give your comment. We'll time you for 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is David Watkins, Davidwatkins. I was on the Board of Representatives for 11 years and came off the board as of November 30th and was chairman of the Transportation Committee, which obviously has to do with local roads, not this project. I live in Japan, which is to the south of I-95. I posed a written question, and actually I don't think you fully understood what I was asking, so if I could expand on it. What I know is that the south end, Japan and the Cove have a number of major arteries that give them access to one, I-95, on and off I-95, and two, to the downtown. My concern isn't in constructability. Anytime I hear comments about closing ramps, I want to make sure that these main connectors, Elm, Canal, and Washington, will continue to have access and be accessible from I-95, all three of them. Whether or not they have independent exits, I'm not arguing about. I don't know enough to be able to judge whether I'd have an argument. But what I do want to make sure is whatever the solutions are, if you're going to combine ramps with a common access, that common access will be accessible by those three main arteries of Washington, Canal, and Elm. And I wasn't quite clear as I looked at your maps and followed your comments on that point.
Okay. Yeah, my apologies, David. Sorry if I didn't quite capture your comment there. So yeah, that as we look at access to and from the highway, typically as a state, as you've driven on 95 or 84, for example, when these highways were designed, it was favorable to have many access points on and off the highway. And at the time it may have worked, but with the amount of traffic that's going through these days, it leads to a lot of the congestion that we see in crashes with having successive merges where folks are getting up to speed or slowing down to leave the highway. So as a department, it's a goal to remove those exits where we can, but we recognize here in Stamford that there's so much traffic on the local network as it is. If we're looking at closing a ramp, we need to understand where those vehicles that would have gotten on at, say, that um, Canal Street on-ramp going northbound, where would they have to go? Is that going to um, have a negative impact on a neighboring intersection? So again, a similar comment or responses before is something that we're looking at, but as we get into a more detailed traffic analysis, we may find, yeah, hey, we need all these ramps so that people have the options. We don't overstress another part of the network with those displaced vehicles.
Thank you. We now have a question from John Levin. I'm going to allow you to unmute. Okay, I see you unmuted. Great. Can you test your audio?
Yes. My name is John Levin. I live in Norwalk, but
Would you mind spelling your name for us, please?
oh, sure. John,
Thank you.
John, Levin, Levin.
Thank you.
Norwalk, Norwalk. And I don't live in Stamford, but like many people in Connecticut and throughout the region, I do use I-95 and do drive through the portion that is being contemplated by this project. I have 4 questions, and I'd like to take them each one at a time. Most of them should be relatively simple and brief. Is the problem that ConnDOT is seeking to address principally traffic congestion? I recognize the bridge is in a different replacement is a different category, but is it just traffic congestion, or are there other things going on here as well?
Yeah, it's safety is another critical component. So, how can we reduce the number of crashes? So those are both 2 of the primary purposes of the project, in addition to the structural condition that you mentioned.
Okay. And is the does the documentation include an assessment of the safety record of this 789 project area?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I look forward to reviewing it. So I understand safety issues. I know that when traffic is crawling past Stamford, I would like to believe that the safety risks are diminished. But I do drive on 95, and sometimes there is traffic congestion, but quite often there isn't traffic congestion. I'm wondering, for my next question, what % of the week is this problem existing? Because clearly it's not all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if Emily or somebody from Stantec could provide the answer. That's certainly something that we could get to you, but I think we found that the congestion in Stamford lasts a significant amount of time, where in other parts of the state you might have a half hour, an hour where it's bad, but down in this part of the state it can last for hours.
Yeah, so we have
Okay.
3 to 4 hours in the morning and the evening. So part of the study will also look at what are some of the benefits that these alternatives will experience outside of those peak rush hours as well.
Okay, understood. And I would just point out that adding a lane is, of course, a 24/7 solution to what sounds like, a 3 to 4 hour problem twice a day, maybe 5 days a week or so. And which leads to my next question. I'm wondering, is do nothing being considered as an alternative as well? Obviously not in reference to the bridge, but in terms of the lane addition. I'm concerned that transportation consultants, when asked to design a new, a highway, are rarely going to say it's fine the way it is. I recognize traffic congestion is a problem, but the people that choose to drive during congested periods, and I recognize some may be forced to, again, they're making a choice where their cost of going slowly is is lower than the benefit that they perceive by making that choice. And so that, I would point out that from the economist's perspective, the free market is actually working. And if we were to simply lower the cost of driving on the highway, then it seems during congested periods, then more people would choose to drive on the highway also during congested periods, because right now the costs is higher and they choose not to. That is my belief. Is there any error in that viewpoint?
Um, I I don't think I can find fault with that
Okay.
perspective, but and I do want to answer your question that the no build, as we call it, is kind of the do nothing alternative.
Yes.
As part of the PEL, that's something that we're looking at as kind of a baseline of, okay, what if we don't do anything here? And as we get into NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, the no build has to be carried all the way through, and we have the option to choose the no build alternative. But I do want to say, just getting back to the safety point, providing the wider shoulders, the longer merge areas, that's something that I think safety is just paramount. And so that whether or not we fully address congestion out here, safety is certainly
Okay.
so
Understood.
important.
And thank you for
Sir,
that. That leads
we're
to my
going to
very
need
last
to allow
question.
other people to jump in. We've got a lot of people up line. Could you just limit your comment to another 30 seconds, please?
Sure. The last question is, does this planning contemplate important changes that are likely to occur in the future? Currently, Connecticut is the only state on the eastern seaboard that does not have highway tolls, which help to limit traffic highway use. Also, the implementation of autonomous vehicles are going to dramatically change the safety profile of roads and are going to improve safety, in my view, quite dramatically. And I'm wondering whether this type of planning process incorporates the perception that those two changes are forthcoming.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so tolling is something that the state DOT can't decide. That's something the legislature would have to pass into law to allow. Um, and autonomous vehicles, certainly that's something that as an industry, we're very interested in terms of what are the impacts going to be for traffic flow and safety. So, um, it may not be reflected in the documentation of the study exactly, but that's something that as an industry, of course, that we have to consider as it becomes more closer to view, I guess I should say.
Thank you. We are
Okay,
now going to
thank
have
you.
Mr. Dave Adams speak. I'm going to allow you to talk, to unmute, and if you could please limit your time to 1 minute. Unfortunately, we have to shorten the time so everyone gets a chance to speak.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having this meeting. It's very important to engage with the public, and I think it's very important. I, for one, want to say that I am for the expansion. I disagree with this idea that widening the highway is not going to reduce congestion. It is, and one of the thing that needs to be talked about here is operator behavior on the highway. I think yeah, going back to keep right except to pass is an important mechanism by which you're going to increase safety and you are going to reduce the amount of congestion on the highway. The reality is that the traffic that comes through this corridor is not just local traffic. It's not coming from Connecticut. It's not coming from, Westchester County. It's coming from all over the country. And a lot of it is logistics traffic. And that logistics traffic, with all the wisdom that was entailed in that, has been moved into the intermediate passing lane. And, that has caused a lot of issues in terms of, the travel lane has now become the passing lane because nobody is in the travel lane, which is a serious, serious safety hazard. And so what I'd like to talk about is that I don't think that you should eliminate exit 7. I think that's a terrible idea. I do think you should expand, with an additional lane, if not 2 additional lanes. And I think that signage is really important. Signage at all of the entrance ramps, encouraging people to accelerate to the speed of traffic before merging.
Okay.
Instead of merging at 35 or 40 miles an hour into 55, 65, 70 miles an hour traffic. These are the things that cause issues. There's
Thank
a
you
ton
so
of people
much,
that
sir. We're going to have to keep moving on, and I put it in the chat where you can continue to say your comments, please, on the website, so we can make sure we get all of your feedback, and we can respond accordingly. I'm going to put that link in the chat. Thank you so much.
thank you very
We're
much.
going to move on now to Jean-Luc, please, and we're going to unmute you, and if you could speak for 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much for this study. As the previous commenter say, increasing the capacity of 95 is not going to solve anything. It's just going to create more congestion at the end, and removing access is even going worse. We are going to spend billions of dollars for very, very few results and keep on increasing the split of Stanford. Boston passed by a very, very expensive tunnel to try to solve this. We have the possibility to get to the north of Stanford and make relatively cheaper full motorway. And for this, for example, doubling the highway. I'm very stuck that this alternative is not studied, because it's the only way for the long term to improve the situations.
Thank you so much for your feedback. I just put in the chat another place you can give comments. We do need to continue to allow other people to speak. I'm now moving on to Gina. If you would like to unmute and please give your comment, and it will be timing for 1 minute.
Great. Thank you very much. I read some of the background materials, and I do want to thank you for validating my experience as a driver here in Stamford for 20 years about how the unpredictability and the increased commuting time impacts, so many aspects of our lives. When my son was younger, the stress of, not knowing if I could make the pickup time at aftercare or make a doctor's appointment. And I'm glad, and I appreciate that you acknowledge that. I have to offer a different perspective to Mr. Levin, who spoke earlier. I think 3 hours twice a day times 5 days a week is pretty significant. And I will also let you know that on the weekends, it can be very, very congested as people go to various, recreational events. The question I have in the Q&A is whether you've studied terminal and commencement points of commutes, because I'd be curious as to
in the live in the chat, or do we, John, did you want to address that?
I don't know if it was just me. I lost some audio there.
We just acknowledged your comment. I just wanted that we did answer in the Q&A,
Okay.
I believe.
Yes.
So that answer is in there. If you didn't see it, just let us. You feel free to comment on the website there. Now I would like to reach to Estella, please. If you could unmute, and we're going to time you for 1 minute.
Hello, my name is Estella Lopez Espelin, and every week I drive all the way from Clinton towards the east in Connecticut to a town close to Stamford to help my family. I help elderly family members every week, and I notice there's a lot of traffic on the weekends. There's traffic early in the mornings, even though I try to leave early to beat the traffic on I-95, so I'm very familiar with the traffic. There is really poor train service in the east. They've reduced the amount of trains on the shoreline east, so sometimes there's 2 to 3 hour gaps between the trains. I would love to be able to take the train from Clinton all the way towards the Stamford area on a regular basis. Unfortunately, there's not the state isn't funding more public transportation, so I don't support the expansion of I-95. I support the expansion of public transportation and more trains.
Thank you so much for your feedback. And again, I've put the links in the chat for additional ways that you can provide feedback. We have a contact us page. I'm now going to move to M. Gluck. If you could unmute yourself and we'll time you for 1 minute.
Hi, I didn't expect to speak. I just am nervous about new construction, and I agree with the increasing of public transportation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your feedback. And you can always enter comment via email. You'll see it on the link there. And now, Andrew Miranda, would you like to unmute yourself and speak for 1 minute?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to speak up. I'm a resident here in Connecticut. I was just moved here a few years ago. I also work for CT Transit, so we supply the bus service here. There is a lot of congestion in the area. There really is. 95, the corridor from 6 to 9 is horrendous. All right. If there's an accident or anything happens on there, it overflows onto the regular roadways. One of your other people that did mention State Street does flood. If it floods, it causes a big problem, a big issue. Everything backs up. Streets are closed. So I am in favor of the expansion. I think it would help. But also they do have to do something with the train service. And I hope it doesn't, during the process, interfere with the bus service with us giving. Because whenever there's an accident, all the buses are late. Everything is late because everything comes off of 95 onto the main roadways here. So I am in favor of it. I hope it works. I am a little concerned with the new bridge over on 30, the new bridge replacement, because we have a DOT project going on here at the facility, and we should be utilizing that entrance soon to be coming in. Our buses will be coming in from there. So I'm wondering, are you going to put up a replacement bridge during the project? How will that go? How will that work?
Thank you very much for your comment. John, did you want to address that about the additional bridge?
Yeah, so that's part of our plan. We will be looking to replace that bridge in the next 10 to 15 years. And yeah, I think we talked about the transit facility earlier, and certainly we'll continue to coordinate with public transportation, CT Transit to minimize our impacts to that facility and also ensure transit is accommodated during construction as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for attending. I put a bunch of links in the chat of various ways you can provide feedback. Email, there's a lot of other ways you can provide feedback. We've got our social media pages. You'll see here on the screen. Links to all of those are there. Thank you all so much for your time. And if you want to sign up for email updates, if you're not already on our email list, please give us a sign up. You can do that on the website, and we'll make sure you stay up to date on various upcoming meetings. And John, if there's anything else you'd like to say before we close out.
Thanks again for everybody's participation, and yeah, please stay involved as we move forward.